There's a version of you that exists in the dark. Not in some distant future, not in some alternate reality, but right now, in this very moment. A hidden self that knows things your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. This shadow version of you holds secrets about why certain relationships keep failing, why success feels hollow even when you achieve it, why you sabotage yourself at the exact moment breakthrough becomes possible. And here's what nobody tells you. The more you run from this shadow, the more control it has over your life. Every unexplained anxiety, every sudden burst of anger, every pattern you can't seem to break, it's all connected to the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide, to deny, to push into the basement of your psyche. But today, that changes. Today, you're going to meet what's been living in your psychological blind spot, and I promise you, this won't be comfortable, but it will be transformative. Before we go deeper, I need you to answer something honestly. When you look at your life right now, do you feel like you're living authentically, or do you feel like you're playing a role that someone else wrote for you? Drop a 1 in the comments if you feel authentic. Type 2 if you feel like you're performing. Your answer matters more than you might think. Now, take a breath. What you're about to experience isn't entertainment. This is psychological archaeology. We're going to excavate the buried parts of your psyche, the aspects you've been conditioned to reject, and we're going to do it through the only language your unconscious truly understands: symbols and instinct. One thing before we begin. Content like this, content that actually helps you face the truth about yourself, requires months of research, psychological study, and brutal honesty. If this journey means something to you, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing. It genuinely makes this work possible. Close your eyes for 5 seconds. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a dark forest at twilight. The sky is that deep purple blue that exists only between day and night. Before you stands a narrow path leading into the trees, and along this path you see 5 distinct figures in the distance. Each one is perfectly still, waiting. You can only approach one. Don't overthink this. Don't analyze. Which figure do you feel pulled toward? The one your body wants to move toward before your mind can interfere. If your instinct pulled you toward the tall, cloaked figure standing completely still beneath the oldest tree, then your unconscious mind just revealed something most people spend decades avoiding. You are currently grappling with your own power, specifically the power you're afraid to claim. The cloak represents concealment, but not weakness. It represents potential that's being deliberately hidden, suppressed, kept in shadow because somewhere along the line you learned that your full strength was dangerous, threatening, too much for others to handle. Right now, your psyche is wrestling with a profound question. What would happen if I stopped making myself smaller? What would happen if I stopped apologizing for my intensity, my intelligence, my ambition, my presence? Deep down, you know you've been dimming your light, not because you lack confidence, but because you've internalized the message that your brightness makes others uncomfortable. Maybe in childhood, your enthusiasm was met with calm down. Maybe your achievements triggered jealousy instead of celebration. Maybe your emotional depth made people uncomfortable, so you learned to be shallow in their presence. But here's what's happening now. The shadow can no longer be contained. The parts of yourself you've been hiding are demanding integration. Your unconscious is done with performance, done with shrinking, done with the exhausting performance of being less than you are. This figure reveals a soul ready to reclaim disowned power, to step into leadership, to stop seeking permission to exist fully. The danger, though, is equally important to understand. The risk isn't that you'll become too powerful. The risk is that you'll swing too far in the opposite direction, becoming domineering, controlling, using power as a tool rather than a weapon. True power doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to crush others to validate its existence. The cloaked figure teaches that real strength lies in choosing when to reveal yourself and when to remain still, in knowing that mystery itself is a form of mastery. If this resonates, you're being called to a profound integration, to embrace the parts of yourself that scare you, not to dominate others, but to finally stop betraying yourself. If your attention was captured by the small child holding a glowing lantern, then listen closely, because your unconscious just revealed something tender and often overlooked. You're in a phase of psychological return, a journey back to innocence, but not the naive kind. This is about reclaiming wonder, curiosity, and the capacity for joy that adulthood systematically destroys. The child with the lantern represents your inner light before the world taught you to be cynical, before you learned that enthusiasm is embarrassing, before you discovered that caring too much makes you vulnerable. This isn't about regression. This is about integration, about bringing forward the parts of yourself that knew how to marvel, how to play, how to create without the crushing weight of perfectionism. Right now, whether you realize it or not, your soul is exhausted from being an adult in all the worst ways, responsible to the point of joylessness, practical to the point of lifelessness, mature to the point of emotional numbness. You've become so good at coping, at managing, at enduring, that you've forgotten how to simply be. The child with the lantern is asking you a devastating question. When was the last time you did something purely because it delighted you? Not because it was productive, not because it impressed anyone, not because it moved you closer to a goal, but simply because it made your heart feel lighter. This choice reveals someone who's ready to heal the wounds that made you grow up too fast, that made you believe safety meant control, that taught you love was conditional on achievement. You're being called to reparent yourself, to give yourself the permission, the encouragement, the gentle acceptance that perhaps you never received. But there's a shadow here too, and it's critical to name it. The danger is spiritual bypassing, using inner child work as an excuse to avoid adult responsibilities, to remain stuck in victim consciousness, to demand that the world make up for what you didn't receive. The child with the lantern doesn't want you to become childish. It wants you to become childlike, open, curious, present, and unafraid to need others. Choosing this figure means you're ready to soften without losing strength, to trust without being naive, to hope again after disappointment tried to kill that hope. And that takes extraordinary courage. If you found yourself drawn to the tall mirror, standing upright in the middle of the path, reflecting nothing but darkness, then your unconscious is trying to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. You're avoiding yourself. The empty mirror, the one that shows only shadow, represents the terror of self-confrontation. It reveals a psyche that has become skilled at distraction, at filling every moment with noise, with tasks, with other people's problems, anything to avoid the quiet, uncomfortable work of looking inward. Right now, you might be functioning perfectly on the outside. You might be productive, social, successful by conventional measures. But internally, there's a growing void, a sense that you're living on autopilot, that you've become a stranger to yourself. The mirror that reflects only darkness isn't showing you emptiness. It's showing you everything you've been refusing to see, the unprocessed grief, the unspoken resentments, the unlived dreams, the person you've become versus the person you promised yourself you'd be. This choice often appears during moments of transition, when the identity you've constructed starts to crack. Maybe it's a career that once defined you, but now feels hollow. Maybe it's a relationship where you've lost yourself.
Maybe it's simply the accumulation of years spent performing rather than being. The mirror is asking, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when the roles fall away? Who are you beneath the armor? Here's what makes this both terrifying and liberating. You've reached the point where you can no longer lie to yourself. The defenses that used to work, the rationalizations that used to comfort you, they've stopped functioning. Your psyche is demanding authenticity, even if it means dismantling everything you thought was stable. This is the dark night of the soul, the psychological death that precedes rebirth. The danger with this choice is paralysis, standing in front of the mirror forever, analyzing, intellectualizing, but never actually stepping through it into transformation. Self-awareness without action becomes self-obsession. The mirror doesn't want you to stare at your reflection endlessly. It wants you to see clearly, then move forward with that clarity. If you chose the mirror, you're being called to the hardest work there is: honest self-examination without judgment, facing your shadow without being consumed by it, and having the courage to change what you find there.
If your eyes followed the distant figure walking away from you, back turned, moving deeper into the forest, then your unconscious just revealed a truth you might not have verbalized yet. You're ready to let go. Not in defeat, not in resignation, but in profound acceptance. This walking figure represents release, the psychological necessity of allowing certain chapters to end, certain relationships to fade, certain versions of yourself to die, so that something new can be born. Right now, whether you fully recognize it or not, you're in a season of completion. Perhaps it's a friendship that's run its course, held together only by history rather than genuine connection. Perhaps it's a career path that once excited you but now drains you. Perhaps it's a belief system that used to provide comfort but now feels like a cage. Or perhaps, most painfully, it's a version of yourself, the person you've been pretending to be for so long that you almost forgot it was an act. The figure walking away doesn't represent abandonment, it represents dignity, the strength it takes to say, "This is no longer serving me," and mean it. To walk away not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet recognition that some things are meant to be temporary. Your unconscious is telling you it's okay to outgrow what once fit. It's okay to close doors. It's okay to disappoint people by evolving beyond their expectations. But here's where it gets complex, and this is essential to understand. Letting go doesn't mean you were wrong to hold on. It doesn't mean those experiences, those relationships, those phases were wasted. It means you've extracted the lesson, integrated the growth, and you're ready for the next initiation. The figure walks away with grace, not destruction. There's no burning of bridges, no dramatic exits, just a quiet, firm decision to honor what was and to release what no longer serves. The shadow side of this choice is avoidance disguised as enlightenment. Walking away from difficulty, from commitment, from anything that requires sustained effort, all while calling it releasing what doesn't serve you. True release requires first engaging fully, first attempting repair, first honoring what existed. Only then can you walk away with integrity. Choosing the walking figure means you're ready to trust the unknown, to believe that by releasing what's finished, you're creating space for what's waiting to begin, and that requires faith most people never develop. If your attention was caught by the figure crouched low, studying something on the forest floor with complete absorption, then your unconscious has revealed something that sets you apart. You're in a phase of deep excavation, of examining the foundation, of questioning the assumptions that built your entire worldview. This isn't casual curiosity. This is psychological archaeology. The crouching figure represents the part of you that refuses to accept surface explanations anymore.
You're done with easy answers, done with comfortable narratives that explain your life in ways that spare you from uncomfortable truths. Right now, you're digging, asking the questions that have no simple answers. Why do I repeat the same patterns in relationships? What invisible beliefs are running my life? What did I inherit from my family that I never chose for myself? Where did I learn that I'm not enough, or that I'm too much, or that love is conditional? This choice reveals a mind that's no longer satisfied with symptoms. You want root causes. You want to understand not just what you do, but why you do it. Not just how you feel, but what ancient wound that feeling is connected to. This is the mindset of someone committed to genuine transformation, not just temporary change. You understand intuitively that lasting shifts require going all the way down to the foundation and examining what was built there before you were even conscious enough to question it. Here's what makes this both powerful and dangerous. When you start examining the ground beneath you, you might discover it was never solid to begin with. Beliefs you thought were truth might reveal themselves as inherited trauma. Values you thought were yours might turn out to be someone else's expectations that you internalized. Identity itself might start to feel like a construction rather than a given. This can be destabilizing, disorienting, even terrifying. The shadow of this choice is getting lost in analysis, digging so deep that you never build anything new, understanding everything but changing nothing. Insight without application becomes intellectual entertainment. At some point, you have to stop excavating and start building. You have to take what you've learned about the foundation and construct something better upon it. But if you chose the crouching figure, you possess something rare, the courage to look at your own psychological infrastructure without flinching, to question everything, including your questions, and to do the slow, unglamorous work of genuine self-understanding. This makes you not just a seeker, but an architect of your own consciousness.
And now you've completed the journey through these 5 figures, 5 archetypal expressions of the psychological work your unconscious mind is calling you toward right now. But here's what matters most. This wasn't a fortune-telling exercise. This was a mirror. The figure you chose, the one you felt that immediate, pre-rational pull toward, that's not a fixed identity. It's a snapshot of your current inner landscape. Think back to that first moment of choice, before logic entered, before you started analyzing. What did you feel? Recognition? Resistance? A sudden clarity, or perhaps discomfort? Because sometimes the truth about our inner world is the last thing we want to face. That initial reaction, that was your unconscious speaking its native language. Now the question that matters: which figure did you choose, and how accurate was its message for where you actually are in your psychological journey right now? I genuinely want to hear from you. Share your choice in the comments. Tell us what it revealed, whether it surprised you, whether it named something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate. Because your insight doesn't just matter to you, it creates resonance for everyone else walking this path. Through your honesty, others find permission to be honest. Through your courage to look inward, others find courage too. And if this experience shifted something in you, even slightly, if you felt a moment of recognition or uncomfortable truth or sudden clarity, make sure you're subscribed, because this is just the beginning. There are deeper forests to walk through, more figures to meet, more aspects of your shadow waiting to be integrated. This work continues, and your presence here means you're ready for it. Thank you, truly, for having the courage to look inward. In a world that constantly demands you look outward, at achievement, at performance, at what others think, choosing to turn your attention toward your own depths is an act of rebellion. It's also an act of wisdom. Until we meet again on the next part of this journey, remember, the shadow you've been running from isn't your enemy. It's the key to your wholeness. And you're braver than you know for being willing to face it.